Alright lads, welcome back to another Mythic Fury Warrior commentary video for Antorus the Burning Throne. This time it's the fourth boss, Portal Keeper Hasabel. This is basically where I go over talent selection, trinket selection, legendary selection, and how I approach the fight from a progression standpoint, hopefully giving you some tips and tricks or showing you what not to do. So talent selection, I am on the bottom platform, so not going up in the portals and dealing with the mini bosses. So that means dealing with waves of imps and spiders every 40 seconds or so. So for that reason, I'm going with War Machine firstly. Then on the second row, I'm going Shockwave. Instead of double time, you don't really need the double charge if you play it correctly, and the Shockwave helps greatly keeping the ads and spiders from casting. If you get, two imps casting or three, it's probably going to be a wipe unless you've got some heavy CD reduction raid cooldowns going on. And then I'm going to be using Avatar and not Wrecking Ball, despite there being ads, because these are intermittent waves every 40 seconds. So you're not going to be whirlwinding outside of your cooldowns. And then I'm taking Bounding Stride, Frothing Berserker, Bloodbath, and Reckless Abandon. Bloodbath obviously because of the tier, and it's pretty good on AoE. Trinket selection, I'm going to be going for Umbral Moonglaves and Convergence of Fates. Umbral Moonglaves, as I said earlier, there's intermittent waves of ads, so there's loads of opportunities to get good cleave off on this one, as well as Convergence of Fates, which is really quite important for this fight because it allows you to use Battle Cry every wave of ads, which is a massive gain. Now, legendary selection, I'm going to be going for Valajar Berserkers and the Soul of the Battle Lord. I've chosen my second legendary to be the Execute Ring as opposed to the Whirlwind Belt because of how staggered the ads are. Unlike Antorus High Command, there's not constantly something to Whirlwind, so you're not going to get a lot of value from the belt, I don't think anyway. And the ring helps really push it over the last 20%. So to begin with on pull, I'm actually going to be using a Prolonged Power as opposed to an Old War because I'm not going to be using all my cooldowns. I'm actually going to be using just a solo Battle Cry with Bloodbath, and I'm leaping in there as well to close the gap as soon as possible because the time between now and the first pack of imps is quite tight, so you need to make sure that you've got consistent uptime on the boss to be able to be getting your Convergence of Fates procs on your Battle Cry. Otherwise your Battle Cry is not going to be back in time for the first set of imps, and it's really going to hamper your damage. And again, that's why I've used Prolonged Power, because the duration should last long enough for the first set of imps. So just avoiding the beamlines there, they're pretty easy to avoid. They do kind of spawn in patterns, I think, sometimes, so you kind of get used to the placement. So with the portals, I typically don't wait too long and try and rely on there being low to spawn. So I've dropped glaives almost as soon as the first imp spawns. Whirlwind to make sure I'm going to cleave my rampages, hit cooldowns, and then I've Whirlwinded first, Odin's Fury whilst it's still in Enrage and Battle Cry, Bloodthirst, Whirlwind, Rampage. Oh, sorry, no, Whirlwind, Bloodthirst. And the reason why I'm putting priority of Whirlwind above Odin's Fury is because I'm using cooldowns as soon as the portals spawn. If you Odin's Fury straight away, you're only going to hit one or two of the ads. So you really want to be doing the Whirlwind first, Odin's Fury, then Bloodthirsting. At least that's what I think is best anyway. So again, see there, you've got Battle Cry and Odin's Fury back ready for the ads. Always making sure to Whirlwind before you pop cooldowns and Rampage. Otherwise, you're not going to have a cleaved two-piece and Rampage. Making sure to move out of the beams. And here I've come to the conclusion that you kind of need to really keep good uptime on the boss to get good damage. I know that kind of sounds counterintuitive, but you waste a lot of time hard switching to ads unless you need to interrupt or stun them. So by putting all your cleave and your AoE through the boss, if possible, if the portal's next to it, for example, nets you generally better uptime, better enrage, and better damage overall. With the purple circles there, you don't have to rush to get out of them. You can just follow the boss, and as long as you're out before it explodes, you're no worries. Now this portal is a little bit off, so I've chucked my glaives in the middle, but again, you see Whirlwind first, Odin's Fury, Bloodthirst, Whirlwind, Rampage, and that gets some pretty nice damage. Making sure to stay out of the beams, and this is basically it. It's just rinse and repeat, backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. And I've fallen out of melee range a little bit. It's really important to keep always uptime on the boss because you're really relying on your Odin's Champions procs and your Convergence of Fates procs to really keep your damage ticking over. So I've not got Odin's Fury for this, which is unfortunate. Or do I? Oh, I think I'll wait just a couple of seconds so I knew that it would be back for the end of the battle cry, which is quite nice. So yeah, I've got an Odin's Fury there on quite a few ads. Again, just running out Whirlwind as I go. And I'm just going to switch to those imps because they're quite high HP. And you really don't want 2 or 3 exploding, otherwise it's going to be a wipe. And you see I said earlier, you don't need the double charge. I've only used, I've not been out of range so far. I think I maybe do later on, but so far the stun is really just there for a panic moment. Something's going to explode or something's in the purple circle and you can't hit it. Yeah, see, I've not got Odin's Fury back for this one, so I've really lacked an Odin's Champion's proc here. And you're kind of just at the mercy of Odin's Champion and Convergence of Fates resets, which can suck when it knocks your cooldowns out of sync, which I do believe happens quite soon. So I think our other Fury Warrior, the Marth, there had his Odin's Fury back for the last pack, and he's just starting to creep ahead now. I'm using an Elite there to stay in melee range. So this pack is wonky. So I'm running over, I'm going to drop my glaives in the middle of the portal and then hit cooldowns on top of them instead of staying on the boss there. On those situations, obviously you have to come off the boss and try and hit the ads. But I've knocked myself out of melee range for quite a while there, which is definitely going to be a loss of damage. So where the ads die quite quickly, when you're hard switching to them, you can quite often find yourself running around trying to find a new target, or they jump around, or they get knocked around by your boomkins, and that's kind of caused me now to not have a convergence reset properly in time for this set of ads. So my damage is really going to be lackluster here, and I start kind of dropping off on the meter. And again, it's a funny spawn on the imps. I should have probably stayed on boss here, but a battle cried at the end, and Odin's Fury to try and pick up some lost damage, but that could be a mistake. That pack was generally dealt with, so I should have probably waited and just held them for the next pack. So again, the portal's coming up now, and because I have used my cooldowns at the end of the last portal, I've now got absolutely nothing for this. So there's an entire pack here where I've got no cooldowns, and yeah, you just see me dropping off on the DPS meter there, and that's because I made a bad judgment call on the last pack. I should have saved them and just use them on that pack instead, but you live and learn. I've now got them all back for this pack, and we've popped Bloodlust, so I'm going to use my second Prolonged power now. I think Prolonged's probably better because we're about to AoE the ads, and I've got all my cooldowns, so there's going to be a decent amount of AoE potential for the stat pot to work out better than Old War. And just leaping to make sure I stay in range of the boss. And I'm going to just peel off the boss there to make sure the ads don't explode. And this is the one time where double charge would have been good. I've lost kind of, 4 seconds there with Avatar rolling, and again, not ideal, but I decided at the time I'd rather try and get to the imps and interrupt them instead of just tunneling the boss. Those kind of decisions you're obviously going to have to make on the fly. You got to try and decide what's going to be best for the kill. So I've got Battle Cry coming up just before execute phase here. But they've spawned in a really wonky position, so I can't start building Juggernaut stacks yet. So I'm going to have to Odin's Fury on the ads and not get any executes on the boss just yet. And then we've got beams in the way, so it's kind of a bit wonky. So I've lost, probably about 4 stacks of Juggernaut here by now. But finally back on the boss, so we can start execute massacre rotation if I get an execute procs, which I don't, so I'm pretty starved for a while. Just trying to weave in a couple of bloodthirsts here and there as I'm very low on rage, so I can only afford 1 execute per massacre. So we've got all our cooldowns coming back soon, and what I'm going to do on the next pack is the imps are imperative. If the imps go off, you're going to wipe. So you do need to put some damage into the imps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop my glaives and then I'm going to Odin's Fury onto the imps, as well as try and keep my Juggernaut stacks going. I've done a really poor job here of massacring in between, but I'm also then going to start Whirlwinding to make sure I get War Machine procs, and then just try and get as many executes as I can onto the boss, because by this point he's basically dead. And that's it, really. So as you can see, there was a bit in the middle of the fight where it really just went a bit Pete Tong, and my CDs became desynced with the packs of the imps. I used them late at the pack where they were coming up late, when there was only maybe about 2 or 3 ads remaining, and then they weren't back in time for the next pack. And then that kind of has a knock-on effect for the rest of the fight, where you spend your time trying to catch up, or then you lose damage, you know. So in hindsight, I should have just held them cooldowns, waited for the next pack, and then picked it up again. If you're lucky, that won't happen to you, and you will have CDs for every pack. Anyway, that was Portal Keeper Hasabel. Hopefully you picked up some bits. Like I said, you should be able to have cooldowns back for every pack if you get decent convergence uptime on the boss and Odin's Champions procs. You can Battle Cry at the beginning. It should be back for the first pack. Take Shockwave for the ads. You can also fear them as well. Interrupt where possible. And yeah, that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and I will catch you on the next one. Cheers.